Hey guys, welcome back and thanks for joining me. This is week 6 of the Winter Stitch Sampler Knit Along, which means we are halfway done. This stitch is called Bunches of Grapes Stitch. Why did I name them these things, guys? Come on. The Winter Stitch Sampler Knit Along Bunches of Grapes Stitch. Got it. I'm Holly. This is At Yarn's Length. Before we get into it today, consider subscribing to my channel so you can watch me screw up more words and fumble my way through more intros. Bunches of Grape Stitch is made up of lots of little baubles, and there are special stitch instructions for these. They are considered a special stitch, and you can see we're building 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, row by row by row. They're a little time consuming, but they are simple even though they're probably new to you. One important thing I want to tell you before we get started is this is the panel that I'm looking at right now, and as you can see, we've got these bunches of grapes next to, it looks like a checkerboard pattern, right? With bunches of grapes, stockinette, bunches of grapes, stockinette. And the reason for that is I added these stockinette panels for 2 reasons. One is to make this look a little more interesting, because I think when you just have a ton of grapes, it's overwhelming and you don't see the detail. But if you remember last week, this looks a lot like the stem that was on those little blossoms, and I didn't want everything to look the same between 2 panels that were back to back. So as I was working this one, I was like, okay, I don't want a panel that looks exactly the same. How can I break it up? And I think it actually worked really well. We do have, grapes that are offset from each other, but it doesn't have the look of Little Blossom Stitch. There is a super interesting thing about it, though. The wrong side also looks like little grapes, right? You can't see the stems as well, but it's still very cute. And if you were to sew this in backwards, ignore my tails, if you were to sew this in backwards, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. I think it's really lovely. So let's go ahead and get started with bunches of grapes. Your first step, just like every other week, is to cast on. I'm providing instructions for the swatch through this video, but not for the panel itself. I'll tell you how to do it, but you're not going to see all of the stitches that are used in the panel. And that's because I did add those 10 stitch blocks of stockinette throughout. So you can't directly follow with the weekly instructions, but this will show you how to do the grapes portion, which is the tricky portion. If you're doing the swatch with me, you're going to cast on 13 stitches, which I have already done. Use your favorite method. If you're working the panel, you're going to cast on 66, just like we've done every other week. And the first thing you'll do for the panel is work 3 rows of garter stitch. That's not required for the pattern. It's just to shore it up so that it fits in with our other panels. Okay, oops. And once again, I'm just showing you how to knit the bunches of grapes. So let's go ahead and get started with row 1. Gonna knit 2 stitches. Oh, that's a little tight, probably because I just yanked it down my cable. We're gonna go ahead and knit 2, purl 4, and we already have our instructions to make our first bauble. That's what the MB is. It's the special stitch for this. To make our bauble, we are going to, all right, follow along. It's lots of steps, but it's a simple process. We're going to knit 1, yarn over. Don't drop these off your needle. Knit 1, yarn over, and again knit 1 into the same stitch. So what we've done is we've turned this 1 stitch into 5. Okay, so it's knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1 into the same stitch. That is written as parentheses, knit 1, comma, yarn over, end of the parentheses, twice, comma, knit 1, but it's really knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1 into 1 stitch. Next you turn it, and this does get a little tedious with the panel, so I'm going to apologize in advance for that. And if you can knit backwards, this is a great time to do it. But I'm going to show you the traditional way. So we're going to purl 5. So the almost got my tail. So the 5 stitches that we just made into that one, we're purling all of those. We're going to flip it again. And this time we're going to, with those same 5 stitches, knit them. Okay, so we made our stitches, we turned and purled them, we turned and knit them, and now what we're going to do is we're going to pass all the stitches over the first stitch. So this is considered our first stitch. I'm going to pass the second stitch over, I'm going to pass this third stitch over, fourth stitch over, and fifth stitch over. So we're left with this little nubbin, this little nubbly bobble, right? And it's real big for the space that one stitch occupies, and that's why it starts to bulge and we get that bunch of grapes. Once we've done that, we'll purl 4. Knit 1. That's the end of the stitch repeat, and knit 1. So if you're working this for the actual panel, you'll have 10 more stitches in here because you're working that checkerboard stockinette. For row 2, it's a little interesting to look at, right? We're going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 4, and when we get to the bobble that we made, we're going to treat it just like a regular old stitch, but we're going to purl into it, just right into the top. And now it's starting to poke out a little bit. Knit 4, purl 1, and then our final stitch is a knit 1. Okay, this is what it looks like from the wrong side. This is what it looks like from the right side. It feels like we've already done a lot of knitting. Probably because we did and it was all right here. For row 3, we'll start with a knit 2. Oh, and one thing I do want to point out, remember the bunches of grapes? We've got 1 bobble, 2 bobbles, 3 bobbles. So we're getting ready to work our 2 bobble row. Okay. Knit 2, purl 3, we're going to make our bobble into this stitch right here, which is offset from our current bobble. So remember, to make our bobble, we knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and knit 1, all into the same stitch. We turn it and purl it. We turn it and knit it. And then we slip them all over. Oh no. Yeah, watch out for that. Watch out for splitting them. I'm actually just going to use my fingers. I think that might be easier for that one. Yeah, watch out for splitting and watch out for dropping that stitch so you don't have to work it again. So I've finished the first MB, which is make bobble. I'm going to purl 1, which is above the bobble that we made in the last 2 rows ago. And I'm going to make my next bobble. So knit, yarn over, knit, yarn over, knit, that's my 5, turn and purl. Sorry, my cable is getting a little kinky, which is weird because I don't think I've ever had that happen before. There we go, it was just twisted. So we'll purl 5, which are the 5 of the bobble. Wow, I don't have it today, do I? I'm just a little off. Okay. And then we'll knit them, the 5 that we made already and purled already. And then after we knit across, we'll individually pass each of these stitches over the first one on the needle. And that makes our second bobble. So we'll purl 3. And then knit 1, and that's the end of the repeat, so we knit 1 more. So you can see the 3 little grapes that we have so far, and look how weird this is, that this kind of like sags down over the edge. So I don't know what you would use this for otherwise if you weren't just doing something decorative, but just keep that in mind if you're putting this on a garment or you want it to be on something useful like a dishcloth. It's going to have those saggy spots, which aren't necessarily a bad thing, that you just need to factor it in with the finished look of everything. All right, row 4. We're going to get started with a knit 1 and a purl 1. Then we'll knit 3. And then we're going to purl into the back of the bobble, knit 1, purl into the back of the bobble, knit 3. That seems like such a huge gap right there, right? Knit 3. So you want to make sure and close it up. Just keep even spacing in the stitches as you go around them, and that's what makes them jut out. Purl 1, and we'll finish off with a knit 1. So we already have a good bit of the pattern done. And based on how long these bobbles take, hopefully you are relieved that they are interspersed with some stockinette for our particular panel. Okay, so for row 5, you've probably already guessed it, we are going to make 3 bobbles in this row. So we'll start with a knit 2, then we'll purl 2, and now we're going to make our first bobble of this row, just like the other. So see if you can remember, see if you can do it without relying on the instructions. But I'll tell you that they are in the same stitch: knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, flip it, purl 5, flip it, knit 5, and then individually slip them over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, sorry if that got a little off screen. So that's the first one. We're going to purl the stitch on top of the last bobble, and then we're going to make another bobble. That's knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and knit 1 into the same stitch. Turn, purl 5, turn, knit 5, pass them each over, the first stitch, and your MB is complete. Purl the next stitch, which is above the bobble from the last row, from 2 rows ago, and make our final bobble for this repeat. Woohoo! So make bobble MB. And it's not that I don't enjoy making them. I think they're fun and interesting. It just, they are a lot of work, right? And they don't take up a lot of real estate. And so this can be a very time-consuming stitch. Doesn't look very pretty there, not much of anything. Oh no! Whew, saved it. Done with the MB. Once you've completed the 3rd bobble, purl 2, knit 1 is the end of the repeat, and then we knit 1 for the final stitch. All right, this is what we've got so far. Row 6, knit 1, purl 1, we're going to knit 2, purl into the back of your bobbles. Oops. Knit the stitch in between, purl into the bobble, knit that stitch in between, and just make sure you're keeping that the spacing between the stitches you're working nice and even, so you don't get big holes from the actual bobbles and the space they're creating. Purl into the final bobble, knit 2, purl 1, and knit 1. So this is what we've got. Look at that. You can poke them out either way. But our actual pattern is going to emerge here in a second with the last 4 rows. Right, because at this point either side could be the right side if you just poked these little bundles out whichever way you wanted. The last 4 rows, 7 and 8, are the same as 9 and 10, so that's kind of nice. And the other really nice thing about them is they're intuitive. So you're always going to start with a knit, and then you're just going to follow along. So for row 7, it's knit 2, purl 4, and all 4 of these stitches that I'm purling were, nope, not all 4 of them, not that one, 4. Okay, so these 4 are setting up the garter stitch panel. This one's going to be knit, and then we're going to purl 4 again, and after this row everything will flow. Sorry about that. So purl 4, knit 1, and end with a knit 1. There we go. So we're establishing garter stitch behind the grapes, just like we did down the sides behind the grapes, and then establishing the little grape stem. For row 8, knit 1. We start with a knit 1, then we're going to purl 1, which was purled before. We're going to knit 4, and these stitches were all, we're working them as they present. I don't want to say they were all knit on the other side because they weren't, they were purled. But what we're doing is we're just working them as they show up. So if they look like a purl, we purl them. If they look like a knit, we knit them. And what that means for this particular row is that we're going to have knit 1, always a knit in the first, purl 1, knit 4, purl 1, knit 4, purl 1, and then our final stitch is always a knit as well. So that is, and you can kind of tell what the wrong side is because the stem is popping a little. So that's 7 and 8, 9 and 10 are exactly the same, and both of those are working the stitches as they present, with always the first and last one being knit. So knit 1 for the edge, and then start the repeat, knit 1, purl 4, knit 1, purl 4. I'm trying. Knit 1 and end knit 1. Okay. And final row. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 4, purl 1, knit 4, purl 1, and knit 1. Woohoo! That is it. That is the 10 row repeat. It is 10 rows for the swatch and not 20 because we don't have the interspersed stockinette panels to work with. So remember, I'm just showing you how to do the grapes. For the panel pattern, let me get mine out here. Okay, see, so we've just worked like this part. Actually, you know, we've just worked this one, right? The first one. So for the panel, you know, you're going to have these interspersed, but then you're going to do another 10 rows, and those 10 rows are going to have the stockinette here, and then the grapes here. And the grapes are going to be worked the same, you know, regardless of where they're placed in the repeat. The stitch pattern is going to be the same. So if you are working this particular panel, you're going to work 20 rows, which is 10, 20 rows, 4 times, 3, 4. And then you're going to work the first 10 rows once more. So this is just like we did with Little Blossoms. And it gives you a nice symmetrical pattern, and it also gets us the stitch count that we need to fit the other panels. I hope that you enjoyed this week. We have the written pattern down below, both for the actual grapes panel and the bunches of grapes stitch itself. Please do consider subscribing. It really helps our channel grow and it helps other people find us. And since we are halfway through our knit along, we really need to get people on board if they want to be able to participate live for the last half. I will see you guys next week for week 7. Bye.